In the morning sun where the flowers bloom, colors blurs like a painter's dream come true. Roses red and violets blue, every petal whispers something new. From tiny seeds to trees so grand, every leaf and bird, it's all at hand. Hello, hello plant, welcome to the show, where every flower tells a story. Watch them grow. Hello, hello plant, in every shade and hue, for every heart and every hand, we've got something for you. Indoor greens and outdoor scenes, design your space, let your garden dreams glide. Personal touch with our garden design, free sessions to blend within your budget line. From tiny seeds to trees so grand, every leaf and bird, it's all at hand. Hello, hello plant, welcome to the show, where every flower tells a story. Watch them grow. Hello, hello plant, in every shade and hue, for every heart and every hand, we've got something for you. Now everybody, let's say hello, 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 hello.
Hi, our community of gardeners, and welcome to another Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and Instagram Live we're doing a Q&A. So we do this every single Monday, and you get to ask any and all questions you have about gardening for Chris. He has yet to not have a question that he can't answer. I think he probably knows every single thing about a plant one can possibly know. So this is a space for you to come share your plant problems. Maybe you're about to start renovating your garden and you have no idea where to get started. Maybe you're selling your property and you want to, put a bit more value on that property. Anything at all that you have, comment it below and we're going to answer it in live time. And if you have any other loved ones, any family, any friends that are struggling with their garden and need a bit of help, let them know about this. We do this every Monday, 12 p.m. So if you have any questions, put them in the comments. Also, hi Susan. Alright, we're gonna see, our first question here is from Sherry, asking what are some low maintenance plants you would recommend for beginners?
Hello, Sherry. Well, I guess it depends. Let's do a gambit of plants. Like, say a really simple plant to grow and have, and it grows into a lovely shape, so you don't have to trim it or anything like that. Would be a golf ball potassium, and you can put them in rows. You can mass plant them. You can do all sorts of things with them. Another thing would be a sky holly, which is a Japanese holly, which grows like a mini little pencil pine. And it only grows about 3 meters tall and about 60-70 centimeters wide. And if you've got skinny little garden beds and you don't want to be trimming something, sky hollies look fantastic. And then another one would be a dwarf nandina. Now, with the dwarf nandinas, you've got red ones, they're the old traditional dwarf nandinas, and these days you've got very cool, nice looking ones, which is a lemon lime nandina. Now, what I love about nandinas is you don't have to trim them. They go into a lovely round shape, about 40 or 45 centimeters round, and they need very little water, very little fertilizer, very little anything, and you just get this lovely shape. So 3 great low maintenance plants would be your sky holly, your nandina, your lemon lime nandina, which is another form of nandina, and then your golf ball potassium. And so they're easy, they're self-shaping. And I guess the other one that comes to mind, and one of my real favourites, is your cousinid. And your cousinid is a type of tree that's mutated, and instead of growing up, it's growing out and round, and it'll fall over a wall, it'll grow over a rock, and it gives you this amazing sort of stringy, sort of green hair-like sort of cover, which just it sounds terrible, but if you Google and have a look at Cousin It, you'll love it. It's a really beautiful plant, and I use that all the time because people don't have to trim it, train it, shape it. You barely have to water it. I've seen them growing in the roundabouts in the middle of nowhere, looking absolutely fabulous. So they're a couple of ones to cut your teeth on. Thank you.
So many gorgeous options there, and yeah, you don't need a big green thumb to get into gardening. There are so many plants that are super low maintenance. We even have a playlist on YouTube that's very tough, very low maintenance plants. So don't stress if you don't have the green thumb gene. All right, let's go to the next question from Bev asking, can you suggest any native plants that are good for local wildlife?
Right. Okay. So what the local wildlife love is they love a little bit of shelter. So small acacias, small bushy style acacias give a good spot for birds to hide. Give them a little bit of shelter, and then so nice little bushy acacias or tea trees, lovely thick little bushy things that the birds can hide in, and most acacias will give you a certain amount of pollen production for the birds. And then you've got things like tea trees that are nice and bushy and not too big, and the birds can hide in them. And then from there you'll find your birds love your callistemons, and there's some nice dwarf varieties of callistemons. So callistemons, your bottle brushes, long flowering, the birds love them. And then of course your grevilleas, the birds absolutely love. We were videoing grevilleas the other day, and hakeas, all those sort of nice flowering plants. And if you get a selection of flowering plants that flower at different times of the year, you can have birds feeding in your garden all year round.
Amazing. We actually went and shot Banksia honey pots the other day, and the birds were all over them.
Yeah, that's right. There were beautiful parrots and beautiful colourful parrots, and they looked absolutely fabulous in amongst the honey pots. And then working in the background, I saw wattle birds. And the wattle birds were going for the hakea. And wattle birds are a beautiful big honey eater.
Yes, stunning. We have a funny video and an educational video up on honey pots.
Yeah, one of the birds actually could talk, and we've recorded that.
Yeah, we discovered a talking bird.
A talking parrot. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, you mentioned that if we were to get native plants that flower at different times of the year, you could get pretty much a garden that's attracting birds all year.
Yeah.
Let's talk about a plan of attack there. Like, what kind of plants do you need that are going to be flowering at different times? That are native.
Well, you've got basically, if you select your callistemons and grevilleas, and then your correas, and then check the labels, check the flowering times on them, you can get year-round flowering. And correas, like I remember when I was a little kid, the first native plant that my parents put into our garden, we had a whole big garden, and they went and they bought a correa, and that was our first native plant, and we were fascinated by it. It had lovely little bells hanging on. I think it was a dusky bells, and it was amazing. And this is where you need your little trees. We had little trees up above this little correa, and the birds would sort of sit up in little trees and jump down onto the correa and really enjoy eating from the little hanging bells of the correa. But basically, look at your labels and go right across all your different natives, and the honey eaters love them. So and look at the flowering times and get yourself flowers all year round. One of the plants that we videoed the other day was the what do you call it? Yeah, that low pink thing with a beautiful musty smell.
Strawberry smoothie?
No,
the protosi. No, it was like a
tryptamine.
Tryptamine.
Yeah. There's a tryptamine. Was it called Alice Payne?
It's one of our recent videos.
Yeah, it was a tryptamine Alice Payne, and I think that flowers for 4 or 5 months of the year, and beautiful pink flowers, and the most amazing sort of spicy fragrance emanating, and the bush that we videoed would have been 1.5 meters wide and 70 centimeters tall. You could fit it into almost any garden, and flowers for months and months and months, and the most beautiful heavenly fragrance for months and months. A really good long flower. So there's so many natives. You really got to go down. Like, we've got a native section out the back, and we'd have 200 different sorts of natives in there, and that's not the biggest range possible at all, but there'd be 200 different natives in there, and looking at the labels, you could get flowers all year round.
Yeah, exactly. Incredible. Next question is from Erin. Do deers eat silver birch?
I would imagine they would. I haven't actually seen it happen, but I would imagine that a deer would eat silver birch.
Anything you can do to stop that?
Plant big tall ones. Like
Like some of our advanced trees that we have?
Yeah, because the deer seem to go for the tips of the trees.
Okay.
So if you planted large tall ones, they don't seem to go for the sides. They really go for the new growth on the top.
Okay.
And so you don't have to go 2 meters tall, and they couldn't get the top of the tree.
But what's good about silver birch is that it is a very fast grower in that kind of first year of its life.
Yeah, that's right.
And we do also sell advanced field-grown silver birch trees that you can get that kind of established look very quickly.
Yeah, that's right. Even we've got 20-inch pots going out today, and they would be almost 3 meters tall, well above a deer.
Okay, incredible. Yeah, so hopefully that solves your problem, Erin, if you are having problems with deer or you're just worried about deers in general. Our next question is from Karen, asking what type of soil is best for vegetable gardens?
Really, whatever soil you've got, enrich with lots and lots of compost, and that will give you the best soil. And if you haven't got a big compost heap, which a lot of people don't have, so the thing is, if you're going to get growing vegetables, get going with a compost heap. Eggshells, all of the kitchen waste goes in there. Really, old bones and meat, everything go into your compost heap, and it's all sort of helps get it done. And then to get yourself, but say you're wanting to get veggies going for this spring, you don't have a compost heap. I'd use a good quality potting mix to get myself started, because potting mix has quite a high degree of compost in it, and then you might look at some organic type fertilizer, something like maybe a dynamic lifter or something like that. So some good fertilizer, some potting mix in the absence of compost, or compost. But I think the soil that you buy up the street is not really what people sell as soil. Isn't really soil. At best, you would use the soil you buy from a landscape yard to mix up with the clay and break the clay up a bit, but you wouldn't actually use it to grow vegetables in. So I would, basically your soil is the best soil. And the only thing is that if you were, say you're up in a high-rise building and you're growing them out in a box on the patio or something like that, what you might do is use a high quality potting mix, add a bit of lime to it, and start making your own compost, and then adding compost to it. So organic matter, compost, and potting mix.
Amazing. Do you think now is a good time to start planting vegetables, or should we wait for spring?
Look, you should be planting vegetables all year round, and I think right now you could be planting spinach, you could be planting silver beet, and you could be planting broad beans, and you might be planting broccoli. So there's lots of, and then pretty soon you'll be planting carrots, and you'll be planting all sorts of stuff.
Incredible. Yeah, love that. All right, next question is from Larry. How often should I test my soil's pH levels, and how can I adjust it if needed?
Okay, so if most people have the problem around Melbourne of their pH being a little bit low, and basically you would use dolomite lime, and dolomite lime, you can't really overdose dolomite lime, and you would use 1 kilo per pH point. So say an ideal pH, say if you're growing vegetables, would be a pH of 6.5 to 7, and say you check your pH in your garden and it's 5, you would use 1 kilo of dolomite lime per square metre per pH point. So if you're 5.5 and you're wanting 6.5, that's 1 kilo of dolomite lime, and you'd mix that through the soil, and you'd probably have to do that once a year. Now, if you had a high pH, that's much more difficult to deal with, probably the best thing if you're a bit high is to get just fine crushed pine bark. It's quite acidic, and mix that through the soil, and that'll cool your pH down.
Okay, amazing. let's see. What is our next question from Betty? Asking, what organic fertilizers do you recommend for flowering plants?
Okay, so organic fertilizer for flowering plants. I think something like dynamic lifter is pretty good because it hasn't got too much nitrogen in it, and so nitrogen's a little bit low because for flowering plants, if you want things flowering, you don't want to overdo them with nitrogen, and that has quite a good organic content and fairly low in nitrogen.
Yeah, perfect. For anyone who's come into our live now, just a reminder, this is a live Q&A, so if you have any questions at all, please comment them below and we'll answer them in live time. Any problems you've been having, anything that you are just curious about, just comment it below and we'll answer it. Going on to our next question from George. How often should I water my garden during the winter months?
Well, it's interesting. So far, this winter has been, look, normally I'd say never, but this winter so far has been dry, and it rather reminds me of the winters back in the sort of the 70s that we had. I was working outside in those days, working in my dad's nursery, and anyway, back in those days it seemed to stay quite dry until the mid of July. And you could do earthworks and plough the fields and do all sorts of things outside until the mid of July. And June was often quite a dry month, but in more recent years it's been quite wet at that time. And then this year it seems to be more like the old days where June's quite dry, and I would say that every week to 10 days while it's dry like this, you should perhaps give it a good soak. But I would expect that come July, like even the last 2 days, we've had quite a bit of good rain, and I wouldn't expect that my garden, it may not need watering till October now. Like we've had good rain, and we start getting good rain once a week now. October will be the next water. You won't be watering at all. But if you had sort of slightly drought conditions and it stayed dry, I'd imagine every 10 days a good soak.
Okay. What are some signs you reckon that your plants are needing a bit of a water in the garden?
I'm not sure. Like it's a little bit of a knack. Like particularly at this time of year, plants don't really wilt in these cold conditions. So you need to look a little deeper. Look at the soil. Look at the situation. Plants. It's hard to explain, but plants do have a look about them. A look that I suppose because I'm working with plants every day, a look that I see fairly easily might be a bit harder for other people. But if you get the feeling that it's a bit dry, there's nothing like having a bit of scratch around with a hoe or a shovel and checking on what the actual situation is in the ground. And what's most interesting is you've got to think about, like if it's a tree, look down 30 centimetres in the ground and see what's going on down there. Don't just look an inch down, because it could be wet as anything an inch down and really, really dry 30 centimetres down.
Yeah, alright, perfect. Got a question here from Susan, asking for a ground cover you can walk on instead of maintaining a lawn, but it can't have flowers in it because we have a blind cat who will step on bees. Yeah, no, we definitely don't want that happening. Okay,
so I think for a really, really tough ground cover that you could walk on, I think there's a couple I could think. The first one is Diamondia Silver Lawn. And Diamondia Silver Lawn, it's actually a type of daisy, and it has very, very few flowers. I've got quite a large lawn of it, and there's only at any one time I would have 20 square meters of it, and at any one time you'd be lucky to find three tiny flowers the size of a 10-cent piece on it. So you could almost you couldn't quite call it non-flowering, but it's almost non-flowering. And our dog seems to love to roll and play on it, and nice big dog, and it doesn't, and I throw the odd tractor wheel over it, and it's really, really tough and really hardy. You wouldn't a path where you walked all day every day, you wouldn't have it there. You might put stepping stones where you're going to be walking every day, but for irregular traffic, you can't beat it. And then the other really good one is your Myoporum urina, which has a sort of a coarse leaf, and it's fairly low and flat and tight, and that's quite good for low traffic as well.
Great, 3 awesome options there.
Yeah.
Our next question is from Chev, asking, what are the signs of overwatering and underwatering in plants? So we talked a little bit about before plants that need watering, but how do you know if you've overwatered it?
So, if you've got plants in a pot, it's fairly hard to overwater, except with indoor plants, like things like your mother-in-law's tongue. When you see them, it's terrible. They just sort of, when you overwater them, they just sort of rot and fall apart. But something like, say, a Japanese maple growing in a pot, for instance, you could water it pretty much every day, and if it's a good pot with good potting mix, the water will drain out and it'll be fine. The only thing you do by watering it every day through cold weather and everything like that is you'd be washing the nutrients out of it. But the much trickier thing is when you plant something in the ground, and there's not so much, people say it's overwatering, but overwatering isn't really overwatering. The problem is where you plant in the ground, you're putting on lots of water, there's plenty of rain, and the water's not draining away, so the water's just sitting around that plant. Now the problem is that plant might, and this happens to a lot of people, it'll be in summertime, and the leaves start to die. Now what I've noticed is that the browning and dried leaves look very similar to when you underwater. So underwatering and overwatering looks almost the same. The only subtle difference that I've noticed is that when you plant a plant out in a garden and you underwater it, you let it dry out, it'll tend to dry from the top down. It's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a tendency. It'll tend to dry from the top down. And when you're overwatering it, the leaves will tend to die from the bottom up. So what it is, when a person comes to me and say, look, I planted this 6 weeks ago, and I've been watering it like crazy, and the leaves are dying, and I don't know what to do. If it's dying from the bottom up, I'll tend to suspect, but I need to dig down and verify it. I'll tend to suspect overwatering, but if it's died from the top down, I'll tend to suspect underwatering. And often people could water like crazy, but they go away for 4 days and the plant dries right out. And so a person watering fairly regularly but just missing a period can cause that dying from the top down. But so what I do is dying, browning, yellowing leaves, particularly in summertime, would tend to indicate overwatering or underwatering. I'm suspicious of overwatering when it goes from the bottom up and underwatering from the top down, but I'd never really commit myself to the actual answer until I've dug around the plant. And if I dig down deep and I find that down deep where the taproot and the main body of roots are, and it's very, very dry and dusty down there, then I'll say it's underwatering. And if I dig down there, and the thing with overwatering, what you'll get is you'll get a bad smell. It's a sort of a septic smell, like the smell when you open up a septic tank, or smell the water that's draining from a septic tank. And what that awful septic smell is the smell of lack of oxygen. So what occurs is you dig a big hole, you put the plant in there, it rains, you water it like crazy, and there's lots of organic matter in that hole, like it might be some potting mix that you bought or some soil that you bought and it's got sawdust and stuff in it. And what happens, immersed in water, that starts to rot, and as it rots, it draws all the oxygen out of the water, and you get that awful smell. So when I dig up a plant that's got leaves dying, and I smell that awful septic smell, I know that what's occurred is overwatering, or alternatively call it lack of proper drainage. So overwatering, lack of proper drainage is the same sort of thing. And that bad smell, that means it's time to lift that plant up, to open it up, to drain it, to reduce the watering, and you can probably save it. But the problem is that overwatering and underwatering tend to look fairly similar.
Tricky, yeah. Just got to get kind of deeper down to the roots to figure out what the problem is. Great. All right, our next question is from Mohammed, asking, can you suggest any efficient irrigation systems for a small garden?
Right, okay. For a small garden, and you're going to laugh at this, a hose, it's hard to beat a hose and a good sprinkler head. Now, we've put a few videos up about that. Now, most people fail with their watering because what's popular is a little 1/2-inch hose with a little orange gun that goes on it. And if you get one of those little 1/2-inch hoses with one of those little orange guns and you put it into a bucket, in most spots in Melbourne, it's going to take 1 minute 15 or 1 minute 20 seconds to fill that bucket with that gun. Now, what that means is that you're only putting out maybe 7 or 8 litres per minute, which is really not going to. It's what you're actually doing is you're not watering the plants, you're teasing the plants. You're upsetting them. They go, oh, there's some water, but there's not enough.
And leaving them dry.
Yeah, and leaving them dry down deep. And so the best place for one of those little skinny hoses, one of those guns, is in the garbage. I've actually made a video about that, or in the recycling bin. It's better, you just get them recycled in plastic. So you put them in the recycle bin, and what you do is you go get yourself a 3/4 inch hose, and we've got a really good, you can just use your finger on the end of that hose, and what you want is you don't want one of these fancy guns, because the guns slow the water. What you want is lots of water delivered softly and quickly, so you can use your finger, but what's better is that we've got a head that we sell on the website, and it's a large aluminium head. It was designed 50 or 60 years ago in America, and it was designed to have a large volume of water go through it and fall gently on the plant, so it didn't wash the soil, it didn't splash the soil, it didn't damage the plant, it didn't wreck the flowers. And basically with one of those, if you get your 1/2 inch hose and your little gun and you put it in the recycle bin, and then you get yourself a 3/4 inch hose, which we sell them, and also the aluminium head, if you get that and you put that on that same tap, put it on full, you'll suddenly find yourself filling that bucket in 15 to 20 seconds. Now what that means is that the amount of water coming out is 5 times as much, and you'll find that the actual flow of water is quieter. It doesn't make that hissing noise. It's quieter and gentler. So it's actually, you've got 5 times the volume, and it's falling quietly and gently on the ground. And so with something like that, you can water your garden beautifully, and not have any. And if it's only a small garden, it's a way of watering is a way of communicating with your garden, because you get to look at everything, and so without spending much money or having much complicated technology or anything there, with a 3/4 inch hose and a nice head, you could be out there watering your garden. But say you wanted a watering system, I tend to like spray irrigation, which is your sprinklers. And the reason why I like spray irrigation is that in Melbourne, most years there'll be 3 to 5 months where you don't water at all. And in that period where you don't water at all, little bugs and things can crawl in and block up your system. And then in springtime, you turn it on, and to find out whether it's all working, you'd have to crawl around for hours and check everything. But with spray irrigation, you switch it on and you look out there and you look at everything, and in 90 seconds you can tell whether it's working or not. And then the same thing all through the summer. You don't have to wait for a plant to die to figure out that a section doesn't work. You just look out there, you switch it on, you look out, you see that it works, and you go, great, it's working, and off you go. So spray irrigation uses a little bit more water, but it's very, very good for time efficiency and not failing without you knowing.
Great, 2 excellent options there. Our next question is from Navideep, but I do just want to mention we are going to start rounding up now, so we're only going to answer, let's say, 2 more questions. So if you do have any questions, please get them in now before we wrap up for today's live. If you do have a question and you didn't get to ask it today, just hop on over to our Monday live, which will happen every single Monday. We do this live Q&A, so just join our next week's Monday live. So Navideep's question is, how can I prevent diseases in my vegetable garden?
Actually, something I've experimented with this idea. I read up on this and I thought it was crazy, but I thought, I wonder if it would work, and I tried this, and what this person did was they wrote an article that if say you're growing lettuces and you harvest, instead of, what you do is normally when the lettuce crop is finished, those last couple of ones that you didn't eat, you just throw them in the compost bin. What it said leave the old vegetables there, and they become a magnet for the bugs and diseases, and plant your new vegetables sort of around the 1 or 2 old vegetables. And I actually ran a vegetable garden like that for a couple of years, and it really worked. So you have this old hideous looking cabbage full of holes and bugs living on it, and it seems to keep the bugs happy, and you can grow your new cabbages right next door to it and not have too many problems. So I actually found that it creates a sort of an ecology, leaving some 1 or 2 old vegetables here and there. It makes a slightly untidy looking garden or somebody else might say a more interesting looking garden. But
Got more character?
yeah, a sort of a more character-filled garden. And it's kind of interesting. But I thought when I read the idea, I thought it was crazy. But I thought I'd give it a go because I was growing veggies for my family, and I didn't particularly want to put poison on it. So I tried that, and it worked. And it's quite a novel idea. But leave the odd old vegetable there, and the bugs seem to be happy hanging out on that, and they seem to leave the new vegetables alone.
Perfect. Our last question is from Susan, asking about hydrophobic soil. How do you water that type of soil?
Right, okay, so we sell soil wetter, and soil wetter isn't really the correct long-term solution. But so let's talk about soil. Soil wetter is an agricultural detergent, and what you can do, say you taking over a garden, or you go into a garden, you find you've got big trees and they're dying, and the ground's dry and dusty. You put your hose on, the water just runs off, it won't go in, and you're frightened of losing. So you can use soil wetter, and soil wetter makes the water go in, distribute better, and stay in. So a good quality soil wetter, applied to the ground, will get the water in deep, and then probably what you would do is you would, for really a hydrophobic situation, I like the old-fashioned, what do you call them, soaking hoses, and anyway, they're the old ones that have the little. They're ones that when you're a child, used to, at birthday parties, you'd run around and play in. That they have little tiny jets of water that come out of them, and they let the water out slowly. And so, if I had an area that was terribly dried out down deep, and I was looking for an immediate solution, I'd put down soil wetter, and then I'd use a soaking hose. But I wouldn't just use a soaking hose for 12 hours. I might use a soaking hose for 2 hours a day for 5 days. And then you'll find, if you dig down, you'll find if you've used a combination of soil wetter and a soaking hose, and put it on in layers. Water doesn't seem to want to go on all at once. It seems to need to take time, and the soaking hose will push the soil wetter down in deep. But say you're looking for a long-term solution, one of the best soil wetters is actually water. Like, you find that once a ground's wet, it'll actually let water in. So if you, so the things that you could do, if you had, like, your soil wetter is not the answer, the permanent answer. And the reason why I say that is that your soil wetter is really a pollutant, and to some extent it pollutes the planet. But it's better than losing, a couple of ounces of soil wetter is better than losing 4 or 5 beautiful big trees. So environmentally, it's good to use as your short-term solution, but long-term, water is the best soil wetter. And so what you can do is you can use a sprinkler or a soaking hose or something like that, and get the ground moist, and then keep it moist. Don't let it dry out. Like, anticipate, moving in the summer, it's getting dry, so you keep it moist. The other thing you do is you can cultivate the surface, and then the other thing is compost. Like, organic matter mixed into the soil improves the ability of the soil to take up moisture. And if you haven't got compost, you can use a good quality potting mix, or you can use like a peat, a coir peat, or a New Zealand peat. So organic matter worked into the surface. Cultivation and regular watering is a long-term solution that doesn't involve polluting the planet.
Amazing. That always sounds good, not hurting the planet. Hopefully that helps, Susan, and that whatever troubles you're having with your soil get cleared up. So we are going to wrap it up there. Thank you to everyone. You are our community of gardeners for coming and participating and listening and learning. I think gardening is probably one of the best hobbies you could have. You're getting time in nature, you're getting a bit of physical exercise, you're creating a beautiful space for you and your family. So the more you learn about gardening, the better your life quality is going to be personally. Do you agree with that, Chris?
Yeah, what it is, you are a living organism, and your plants and your garden are living organisms as well. So by surrounding yourself with more of your own kind, more living organisms, you're going to make your life better.
Exactly, but we know that gardening is quite tricky, especially if you have no idea and don't know anything about plants, I mean, there's so many types of plants and so many tips and tricks that it can be very overwhelming, and that's why we do these
Actually,
lives.
something I've said before, but I'll say it again, is I always thought that horticulture was the biggest, most complicated, most difficult thing on the planet, and then I was doing a bit of work with a chap who's a very, very smart guy and a trained botanist, and he said to me one day, he said, look, he said, there's really just one thing that you have to know. And I said, gee, what's that? You know? And he said, plants want to grow. And so using that as I've used that ever since, and he said that to me over 40 years ago, and I've used that ever since. That, you know, I'm dealing with a problem with a plant or some plants or a crop of plants or something like that, and the first thing is, and the most powerful fact that you could know is that plants want to grow. And then what he said, what you've got to do is not do anything to stop them from growing. So make it, they want to grow, allow them to grow, don't stop them from growing. So basically I've used that in 1,000 different ways or 10,000 different ways ever since. So when I'm dealing with a problem, I'm thinking, well, this thing wants to grow.
Exactly.
And then you look at what might stop it from growing, how you might assist it to grow, how you might create the space or situation. But knowing that plants want to grow uncomplicates the whole subject of horticulture.
Yeah, perfect. Also, hi Ken, we're so glad you came in for a garden design. He was the last client at night yesterday.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Ken is planning a fabulous garden, sort of a little bit Paul Bangay, and we were helping him with that.
Ooh, exciting. Can't wait to see that, Ken. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming. We do want to share this gardening knowledge because it's not that complicated. People just make it complicated, but it can actually be quite simple.
Yeah, once you take on the idea that plants want to grow, and what you've got to do is allow them to grow and not prevent them from growing, if you take that on as a central idea, you'll find that it all starts to simplify and open up around that.
Exactly, and we want more people to know this, and we need your help in that, in sharing that we do these lives and telling them about our platforms and things, because we do so much educating there so that people can hear this and know this and have better gardens in no time. So please do share, and I hope the rest of your Monday is wonderful.
Thank you.
In the morning sun, where the flowers bloom, colors burst like a painter's dream come true. Roses red and violets blue, every petal whispers something new. From tiny seeds to trees so grand, every leaf and bird, it's all at hand. Hello, hello plant, welcome to the show, where every flower tells a story. Watch them grow. Hello, hello plant, in every shade and hue, for every heart and every hand, we've got something for you. Indoor greens and outdoor scenes, design your space, let your garden dreams glide. Personal touch with our garden design, free sessions to blend within your budget line. From tiny seeds to trees so grand, every leaf and bird, it's all at hand. Hello, hello plant, welcome to the show, where every flower tells a story. Watch them grow. Hello, hello plant, in every shade and hue, for every heart and every hand, we've got something for you. Now everybody, let's say hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Hello, hello, plant. Welcome to the show.